Jorge Luis Borges, who lived from 1899 to 1986, was an Argentine essayist, poet, short story writer, translator, consummate storyteller, and philosopher. He is today regarded as a key figure in Spanish language and international literature, and one of the evolutionists of the unfolding postmodernist literary movement of his time. Many of the tales in his short story collection Labyrinths are stunning takes on the universe's absurdity, proposing that reality is so vast that it escapes our comprehension. Borges's work was often influenced by his profound awareness of the insurmountable gap between whatever reality is, and the constructs of logic and language created by humans. This realization led him to write stories that emphasized language and logic over the actual so-called real world. For researching or defining a thing he felt still never truly nailed it. If the universe is indeed absurd, as many postmodernists had argued, what else is there to write about besides its absurdity? Jorge Luis Borges provided an answer to that question. He set out to well and truly unpack the absurd nature of known reality under his authorial microscope, in one of the Labyrinths collection's most famous tales, the Library of Babel. Rich with fascinating details, it depicts the universe as a library, made up of an apparently infinite number of identical hexagonal chambers, any of which may act as its center. Its boundaries are unreachable. The library's shelves are uniform and stocked with books, always 35 per shelf, each containing 410 pages, with each page consisting of 40 lines of 80 letters and spaces. Inexplicably, these books utilize only 25 characters, a comma, 22 letters, a period and a space, and are arranged in seemingly random yet somehow non-repetitive sequences. Rarely a meaningful line emerges, such as "O time thy pyramids," but most are leagues of senseless cacophonies, verbal jumbles and incoherences, and not in any known language. As a result, the books encompass every possible combination of the 25 symbols, extensive but not infinite, and they express everything that can be articulated in all languages. This implies that all solutions to every problem and question, including the library's origin, must exist somewhere within these books, which the librarians refer to as the vindications. Apparently, when this concept was first introduced, librarians from each hexagon visited others searching for the vindications, unaware the chance of finding any was virtually zero. But there are more twists to this cosmic library. The story's narrator suggests that the library is infinite and cyclical, so one traveling in any direction, even for centuries, would encounter the same volumes in the same disordered arrangement, which, through repetition, would create an order, the order. This order implies the existence of a god or architect, since such a library couldn't exist simply by chance. However, this order is so immense that it remains entirely beyond our understanding, thus making it, in terms of real-world experience, equivalent to a total lack of order. What Borges is demonstrating through this story is the philosophical concept that we living are merely fictions, whose realities are entirely contingent upon our own constructions. In The Analytical Language of John Wilkins, Borges creates a fictional Chinese encyclopedia that presents an absurd, often hilarious, but obviously arbitrary classification of animals. The mock categories include animals which belong to the emperor, those that just broke a vase, animals which can be trained, mermaids, and animals which at a distance resemble flies. These bizarre yet solemnly pronounced groupings are designed to highlight the idea that all human classifications are fundamentally arbitrary. Knowledge is relative, fluid, arguable. To Borges, it's impossible to encapsulate reality in linguistic terms, because language and reality operate under totally different rubrics. words can't really capture what truly is. No classification of the universe can be anything but conjectural. Guesswork, propositions and arguments, because as finite creatures, our grasp of that universe is just too limited. Language and logic follow their own invented rules, while reality adheres to its own. And in a Jorge Luis Borges story, there is no automatic, necessary connection between the two. He often mentioned Zeno's paradox, which shows that using pure logic, Achilles could never catch up to a tortoise that had been given a head start, yet in reality, Achilles would overtake it. This discrepancy allows us to evaluate whether our sensory perceptions are more trustworthy than our logic, or vice versa. Plato, of course, sided with and promoted logic. Borges's thought-provoking stories suggest that we can only comprehend reality through either our senses or logic, and that the divide between the two remains unbridgeable. He argued this by citing infinite regress, which is logically possible, but can't truly occur in reality. It's where something is replicated within itself, therefore theoretically, to infinity. Picture a beverage tin on which a character holds the same beverage tin, on which in miniature the same character holds the same beverage tin, and so on, incrementally growing ever smaller. Curiously, this writer-philosopher also enjoyed escapist fiction. In fact, Borges admired writers like Rudyard Kipling and Robert Louis Stevenson, whose novels and short stories were often criticized for their implausibility and the neatness of their plots. Ironically, it was these very qualities that Borges valued. Kipling and Stevenson never tried to be realistic. He also, like many postmodernists, loved 1001 Nights and Kafka's works for similar reasons. To Jorge, they operated from their own clean logic, embodied perfection and beauty, and provided a formal completeness and meaning that incomprehensible reality couldn't offer. He further developed this concept in Tlön, Uqbar, Orbis Tertius, the tale of a secret society that over 3 centuries created an imaginary land and subsequently an imaginary planet. In the story, one of its founding figures was Bishop Berkeley, the idealist philosopher, and as a result, this invented world was a particularly intriguing place, with its own intricate culture. It also turned out to be a realm which was logically consistent and coherent, because it was constructed by humans using the principles of human logic and language. As news of this fictional planet spread, the so-called real world began to adapt to Tlön, after which, unique physical objects from this created realm began manifesting in our reality. The author's reasoning was clear. Tlön was fabricated, yet it was orderly, rational, and comprehensible in relation to our own reality, whose order and meaning are ever elusive. As Oscar Wilde declared half a century earlier, reality is merely a process seeking form. Art represents that form, and when someone achieves formal perfection in their creation, we instinctively strive to align reality with it. Thus the world was transformed into Tlön. Of all the postmodernist writers, Jorge Luis Borges was perhaps the most inventive and astonishingly articulate in communicating the philosophy that now underpins literature, which is that art and literature can create fictions that help us navigate life, if we remember that these are fictions with no inherent connection to reality, like a game or daydream. Thus, if constructs, theories, and ideologies enhance our happiness and well-being, they serve a purpose, but we must always remind ourselves, they are our inventions, not the true world. Postmodernists can still advocate beliefs, as did John Barth, Gabriel Garcia Marquez, and Kurt Vonnegut, but each of these writers still took care to identify their works as fictions. The warning of postmodernist philosophy is that anyone who creates or invests in a fiction or ideology then treats it as reality, may become willing to die for it, or worse, to kill for it. the ultimate madness. For rabid commitment to what is, objectively speaking, merely the latest arguable bundle of thoughts has, across the span of history, produced untold horrors. The Nazis' worldview remains a chilling example, its pirated fragments drawn from philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche, American race law, and occultist Madame Blavatsky. Unlike Borges, whose observations stimulated open, benign, deep thought, Hitler's tossed salad of truth playbook was a malevolent, self-serving rewrite of reality. As if in tribute to his cosmic library story, Jorge Luis Borges, despite progressively losing his eyesight, was honored with directorship of the National Library of Argentina. His intricate, ingenious philosophical prose has influenced generations of postmodernist writers, with many acknowledging him and paying tribute to his ideas in their own works. One notable example is in Umberto Eco's The Name of the Rose, which features a suspiciously familiar character, a wise, blind librarian whose library is, in fact, a massive labyrinth. Have you read any of Borges's stories? Please tell us in the comments section, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to help keep world literature alive. Jorge Luis Borges was a profoundly brilliant thinker who challenged his era's accepted notion of reality, and you can meet his forerunner, the most famous witty storyteller philosopher of them all, in our episode 23.